Hey guys, I'm Ethan, and in this video, I'm going to give a brief introduction to web development and provide a step-by-step tutorial on how to create your first web page. Think about it. We use websites for practically everything these days, from staying connected on social media to shopping for our favorite products. The web is an integral part of our digital experience, and it's powered by the incredible field of web development. Now, let's take a step back and explore the history of web development. It all started back in 1989, where a British scientist by the name of Tim Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web. Then the late 90s brought the famous dot-com boom, a period of rapid growth amongst tech companies rushing to establish an online presence. Web development began with simple static pages containing basic text and hyperlinks. For example, eBay back in 1999, you can see that there are just a bunch of links to all of the different categories and other ways to navigate the website. And that's pretty much how websites were back in the 90s. A lot of these companies wanted to sell their products and just had hyperlinks to those products. And here's another example of AOL in the 90s, a little prettier with colors and images, and some styling on, some of the links, but overall it was still pretty similar to most web pages back then. So as the demand for more interactive and dynamic content grew, developers introduced technologies like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, laying the foundation for the modern web. Fast forward to today, web development has evolved into a sophisticated discipline. We have powerful frameworks, libraries, and tools that make it easier for developers to create stunning responsive websites like these. And now let's finally shift gears and talk about what this tutorial is all about. In this step-by-step guide, we'll be creating a basic web page together. You don't need any prior experience or knowledge, and it's a perfect starting point for anyone interested. Along the way, I'll be explaining the key parts of web development, HTML tags, styles, and how the general page layout works. So first, let's talk about HTML, which stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Simply defined, HTML are the building blocks of a web page. They define the structure and the content of a website. For example, any website that you'll search up, all of the components, such as headers, paragraphs, images, all the components are HTML tags. For example, you can see a header tag will be represented as an H1. You can also have multiple headers like an H2 and or H3. Another example is a paragraph tag, which is just represented with P. And syntax-wise, they're enclosed in angle brackets. And these tags come in pairs. Whatever content is inside these two pairs is the actual content. So if I wanted to make a header, say heading 1 in this example, I would write heading 1, the text heading 1 within these two tags. There are many HTML tags. For example, the form in the bottom left, the form itself is a tag, and all of the components within the form are also tags. The submit button is a tag. The radio button, which allows you to select multiple options, is a HTML tag. The input, where you can type in your first name and your last name, those are tags. All of these tags represent the content of your website. And so moving on to CSS. CSS basically brings life to our pages. It makes them visual appealing. It adds on to these HTML tags from before. As you can see in these examples, we have all of these headings, right? But they're just a default black color that's bolded. It's nothing special, really. And CSS helps make that look a lot better, right? As you can see in the McDonald's website, you can see all of these colors. The headers are a different color. And if you wanted to add styling, you would call that HTML tag. So for example, the H1 tag, I could add a red color and I could also bold it. And there's a bunch of styling you can add to an HTML tag, where I could have changed the font size, I could add letter spacing. The sky's the limit for CSS. But most importantly, I think what CSS helps with is the layout of a website. So CSS not only allows you to add styling to an HTML tag, it also helps position HTML tags to other HTML tags. So once again, in this McDonald's website, all of the tabs in the top right, so like the menu, the Happy Meal restaurants, all those tabs are positioned that way through CSS. Same with the arrow buttons in the bottom left; those are also positioned with CSS. So that was a brief introduction to HTML and CSS, but in the tutorial, I'll go more in depth as I'm walking through exactly what I'm doing. But hopefully by the end of it, you'll have the knowledge to create your own basic web page and a solid foundation to explore more advanced web development concepts. So without further ado, let's get started. Let's just jump straight into the tutorial. So whenever you're developing, right, it's very helpful to work with what's called an IDE, which stands for Integrated Development Environment. Basically, an IDE provides a bunch of tools to help make the coding and programming process a lot easier. The IDE that we're gonna use is called VS Code, right? There's a bunch of other popular ones, but yeah, this is the one I recommend. So you're just gonna go in the download section, whichever operating system you have, Windows, Mac, or Linux, just follow directions. A quick note, an IDE isn't necessary to write these HTML and CSS files. This is because these files are written in plain text, which means text in its purest form without any formatting or styling. So if you wanted to, you could open up a notepad on Windows or TextEdit on a Mac, any text editor, and you could just write your HTML and CSS files there. Compared to like a Word document, such as like Google Docs or Microsoft Word, that's what's called rich text, not plain text. So rich text means that you can style, add like colors to, highlight it, and so that's why you can actually create HTML and CSS files with kind of a text editor. You don't need an IDE, but it's very helpful, and it makes it a lot easier. I'm just gonna open up VS Code now. You'll probably get to this page. Before we start, we're gonna add what's called extensions. So you're gonna go here, and basically what extensions are just like extra tools that you can install for VS Code. And these are supposed to help with maybe specific programming languages or just any other helpful kind of tools. So we're gonna install a couple tools. The first one called Emmet abbreviation. I'm pretty sure it's this one. Yeah, I already installed it, so it should say like install here, right? So like install here. Yeah, Emmet basically helps you write a lot of these HTML tags a lot faster and just more efficiently. Same with like CSS, JavaScript. And then, so now the second one that we're gonna install is called Live Server. And I'm pretty sure it's this one. Yeah, I've already installed this, but this is what's actually gonna display our website on a browser. So now we can actually open up a folder now. I'll create a new one. I'll create a new folder. I'll just say, we'll call it recipe, right? Since that's gonna be the website that we're gonna create. And then in this recipe, right, so we're gonna open it, and then, yeah, I guess just others. And then in this recipe, we're just gonna create two files. That's gonna be the HTML and the CSS file. Click new file, and then we're gonna call this index.html. And it's important that it's index because this helps with deployment and anything else. So by default, you should always name it index.html. And then the second file will just be CSS. This you can actually name anything, but usually I just do style.css. I'll do styles.css. And so now for what this website will look like. I did a little sketch on Sketchpad. Hopefully this gives a good idea. So we're gonna have a recipe. It'll be any recipe, it'll just be the name of the recipe. And then this image right here will just be the image of it. And then here are the ingredients and the directions. This is kind of the general layout. So let's go to the HTML file. So the first thing that we're gonna have to create is a body, right? And Emmet makes this really easy, right? All you have to do is press exclamation point, and you can see here that the Emmet abbreviation will give you this whole list of tags and whatever else. And all you have to do is just press this. Also, another way you can do it, I think, is exclamation point and just press tab. So tab, and then it'll write it all for you. And a lot of this you don't really need to know. I mean, this is pretty self-explanatory. It's just the language is English. I believe this UTF-8 is like a character encoding. This is for like older versions of Internet Explorer, I think. But a lot of this you don't really need to know. This is always going to be the same for every HTML file you create. This document will actually be the title. You'll actually see this when I open it up on a browser. Let's quickly just write something random, right? Let's just write hello world right here. So in this website, right, we want to add content inside this body and not outside of it, right? This will be what's on their website. And so now, right, if we want to see this on a browser, right, we're going to use live server. We can right click it, and you can see here I have it open with live server. So I'm going to click this, and here you go. And this is what our website looks like right now. It just says hello world because that's the only thing we added. I'm actually going to copy this link and go to Google Chrome because that's the browser I prefer. And a quick note on live server and how like the HTML file actually is displayed on a browser. You don't actually need the live server. You can actually go directly in your Finder, right? And so it's called recipe, right? You can actually click on the HTML file, right? And you can go open with, and you can open it with any browser you want. You can do Safari, right? As you can see here, it says hello world. It's the same thing. You can also just open with Google Chrome, same thing. The difference here is that with live server, all of your changes are updated almost automatically. So if I wanted to change hello world to hello Ethan, I would have to refresh the page every time I made a change for the HTML file. But for this, it's automatically changed. I don't have to refresh it. You know, I can add anything here, right? And it'll automatically update. But here, it doesn't update until I refresh this page. Live server is obviously just a lot easier. You don't have to refresh it every time. So that's why we added this extension. So now to go back to our sketchpad and kind of look at what this recipe looks like. If you can remember kind of some of the HTML tags that I talked about earlier, we're going to use a lot of headers here. This recipe will be a header, the ingredients, the directions will probably be a header. This image will actually be an image tag. And then here, these list of items are another tag, but I'll go more in depth later. We're going to create a header tag, right, which is just H1. And so Emmet abbreviation also makes this really easy. So all you have to do is type in H1, and then you just do tab. This way, you don't have to type the whole angle brackets, and it just makes it a lot easier with Emmet abbreviation. All you have to do is just tab. You just type in H1 and then tab. Whatever's inside these two tags, this pair of tags, is the content. So we'll just call it header for now. This is what it'll look like. For now, we'll just call it recipe. That'll be the recipe name. And then we're also going to add an image tag, which is just img. That's just what it is. And then just going to do tab. And then here's some fields in this tag. The source is the location of the image in your Finder or your File Explorer. And the alt here is actually important. This is for screen readers who might not have the ability to see the picture. So we have to provide some sort of name to this image, right? So we'll just call this recipe name. We'll decide this later, but and also a quick note on image. Image is actually one of the few tags that doesn't need a closing tag. You could add an image here, right? And it would still work, but it's not necessary, you know? So you can just leave it like that. And then, all right, let's go back. So yeah, as you can see here, right, we didn't supply an image, so it's gonna just say recipe name for now. But let's go back to the sketchpad, right? We have an image, recipe, and then we're gonna have another header here. Here, we're actually gonna use H2. And as you can see, when I do H, you can see there's H1, H2, H3, H3, all the way to H6. H1 is the biggest header, and then it decreases in font size as you go to all the way to H6. So for the ingredients and the directions, we're going to use a smaller one. We're going to use H2 instead. So here we're just going to call it ingredient. And then here we're going to do another H2 tag, and it's going to be directions. So here we're going to use what's called a new tag called, for the list of items, we're going to use what's called a unordered list. And an unordered list is denoted with UL. So unordered list. An unordered list is just a list of bullet points. That's pretty much what it is. You can add as many as you want, and we're gonna use another tag for these list items, and that's gonna be called li, which is list item. And so as you can see here, when I go back here, you can see that the ingredients has a bullet point. And so I can add however many of these I want to. So I can add like 5, and you'll see 5 bullet points. The directions, however, is a little different, right? It's not an unordered list, it's an ordered list because it's a list of directions in order. So we're going to use what's called an ordered list, which you can probably guess is just OL, right? Unordered list is UL, ordered list is OL. And so it works the same way as an unordered list. You can add as many list items as you want. The difference here is that you'll see the list items numbered. So right here, 1, 2, and 3. This is pretty much all of the content that we need. Now we just have to find a recipe. I think I found one earlier. It's just like a lemon herb chicken recipe. From here, I think I'm gonna, yeah, it's pretty simple. Let me first find a picture. Let's go here. Yeah, this first one's okay. So let's just save this image. I'll just call it chicken. Where is it? Okay, yeah. And then now we're actually gonna drag this within our recipe folder. So I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna just drag it in here. This just makes it a lot easier to work with the image. I could keep it in like my downloads folder, but it's just a lot easier if you drag it in here. So now this is where we can actually add our image to our HTML file. So in order to navigate to a different file, so within the same folder, you can do dot and slash. And so as you can see here, I can select any files within our recipe folder. If you wanted to go back a directory, you could do 2 dots. And as you can see here, I could actually go back to downloads here and select any downloads I wanted, any pictures I want. So here, we're gonna select chicken. And so now we should be able to see our chicken image. Perfect, nice. Let's change the alt name to lemon herb chicken image, right? So that screen readers, whenever they hover that image with their mouse, it'll say lemon herb chicken image. Let's just change this header to lemon herb chicken, not image, lemon herb chicken. And so yeah, that'll be our recipe name, our image. And then now for the ingredients, it's just gonna be a lot of copy and paste. This is what we have now. So honestly, this doesn't look too bad, but I think we want to make it look a little better. And this is where the CSS comes in. Before we write anything in our CSS, right, we have to link it to our HTML file. So within our head tag, we're gonna add a link tag. And this link will be a link to our CSS file. This is the href field. We're gonna do the same thing we did earlier with the dot slash, and then we're going to select our styles.css. And just for a quick demonstration, so in order to access our header, we're going to just use the header selector. And what this means is that we're going to use the actual tag name, which is just h1, and then use curly braces, and then whatever is inside these curly braces is the styling that we're going to add to this h1. Or this header. So I could add like a font size of 100, let's say 100 pixels, I think. And yeah, you'll see it's really big now. I could add like a color and I could make it red, and now it's red. Obviously, we're not gonna do that, but that's just a quick example on some styling that we could add. But we want to center it, right? In order to center, it's gonna be what's called text align. For most text-related HTML tags like headers, paragraphs, you can use text align in order to center it, and it'll be center here. And boom, boom, there you go. And then we also want to center the image, and same thing as earlier, we're gonna access the image tag by just calling the image. In order to center this image, we can use a display block. We can add a margin of 0 and auto. This is a very common way to center a lot of elements, a lot of HTML tags. This display refers to its parent element. So basically, I'm setting this image as a block level element with respect to its parent, which is just this body tag. Margin is just shorthand for margin top and margin bottom, margin left, and margin right. This is top and bottom, and auto is left and right. This means there's no margin on top or bottom, and then the auto means that we have this auto just basically sets the left and the right margin of an equal size, and this is what causes it to center. To center these, same thing as earlier, right? We want to text align the headers. And another neat thing you can do is if you want the same styling for different HTML tags or elements, you can actually use a comma and also set it to the H2 tag, which is what the ingredients and the directions tags were. Yep, so now you can see ingredients and directions are centered. And last but not least, right, we want to center these. But before we do that, I think a nice way to make this look a little prettier would be to add like a little border around this, this recipe. We can actually surround this whole thing with what's called a div. And a div is a very, very popular tag. It's probably the most common tag that HTML tag that developers use. And a div basically just stands for a divider. You can see a div like this. What's really neat about a div is that you can place any other HTML tags within this div, and you can create basically boxes or containers. And divs help a lot with the layout of a page. So we're actually going to surround all of what we just created inside a div. This way, right, we can actually use a little border to surround this whole recipe. Another way to add styling to an element is to use an ID field. And we're going to add an ID of a name. We'll call it like recipe container. In order to access our divider or div tag, right, we can use another selector here, and the ID is with a hashtag and then the ID name, so recipe container. Let's just try to create the border, or let's just try to create the height and the width first. So we'll set the width to, we'll set it to like 300 pixels, and then we'll set the height to like 700 and see what that looks like. All right, nice. So as you can see, that changed it, right? But because the recipe container is the whole parent of all these, it's actually not centered. So we have to center it too. And we can use the same display as the image. We can just copy this, and this will also center it, I believe. Yeah, nice. We can also add some border. We'll add a border color of, let's do brown. And then we can't see this yet because there are other border attributes that we have to add. So we have to add a border width. So we'll set this to, let's say 4 pixels, not too big. And then border style, we'll set it to solid. So now this is where we can actually see it. And clearly it's not really actually fitting in this, so we might have to add a little more height. There we go, nice. Let's make it like 900. Okay, perfect. That's perfect. Nice, so, and then let's make the width a little bigger, make it 400. I think that looks good. I think that's good, maybe a little bigger. Nice, okay, I think that looks good. And so, in this border, right, we can also add a border radius. I think that looks a little better. We'll make this also 4 pixels, and this basically just adds a little, like, curve to the border. And then lastly, we can also add a background color to this whole website. So we'll do body, and we'll change the background color to some sort of red, but let's change it here. We can change it to maybe like a light red like this. Oh wow, that was okay. Let's change it a little lighter, maybe a little lighter. And actually, to the image, this looks a little weird, so we can actually also add a border to this image. We can just do border instead of doing all the border color width style. Let's just make it black, solid, and 2 pixels. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, nice. I think that looks a little better. Let's also make the width a little larger for this image. Let's see what the 100 pixels looks like. That looks smaller. 300. Let's do 250. Okay, I think that looks good. And let's actually change the recipe container background color. So we can actually change the background color to here. We'll change it to, let's make it like white, antique white. I think that might look good. Yeah, there you go. And then we can also change the font size too, or the actual font. We'll change the font family. We'll change it to like maybe Arial. I think that looks better. Okay, nice. And yeah, I think we're done. Just to quickly go over, we have our header, right, which is the lemon herb chicken. We have the ingredients header, we have the directions header, and then we have 2 lists, right? One being an unordered list, which just has all of the ingredients in bullet point form, and then we have an ordered list, which is like a step-by-step kind of instruction for this recipe. And then we added an image tag for the recipe, or the image of the recipe. And then finally we added a container, right, to surround this whole thing to add a little styling, add a little color, make it just look a little better. So yeah. And so yeah, that's pretty much it for the tutorial. There's a lot more you could do with this page. You could add maybe like a comment section, a rating. There's a bunch of stuff you could add to this recipe. You could add more recipes, but this is a pretty basic recipe website. Hopefully you got a good grasp on exactly how HTML and CSS files work, how they're displayed on a website. So yeah, thank you.